Hi everybody, I'm here today doing a different kind of video today. I am going to talk to Raelan Agle, and I met her via YouTube, and I never met her in person. And Raelan is such a inspiration to me because she tells her story on her YouTube channel. She interviews people with chronic fatigue syndrome, and it's amazing the stories that I hear on her channel and her own personal story. And I do have a video on my channel that I explain what is chronic fatigue syndrome. And I have some tips and things that I recommend to patients that come to my clinic. Even though I do have a clinic for people with chronic pain and my channel is dedicated to people who have chronic pain, I have to tell you that chronic fatigue syndrome is very common even in my clinic. A lot of my patients who have chronic pain, they also come with fatigue symptoms, and sometimes with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'd like to here to explain a little bit the difference. Chronic fatigue syndrome is mainly a very deep fatigue that doesn't get better with common rest. Sometimes it's followed by pain too. Chronic pain can be something that these people may have, but it's mainly fatigue. And it's something that we still don't understand what causes chronic fatigue syndrome, where is the problem. So I'm happy when I hear about someone that has conquered chronic fatigue syndrome. I talk about conquering chronic pain, but today we are going to talk about conquering chronic fatigue syndrome with Raelan. So welcome, Raelan, to my channel here. I am excited that you're going to share your experience. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an incredible opportunity, and I have so much respect for the work that you're doing. And there's so much overlap in my experience when I'm interviewing people who have recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome, and now more and more long COVID as well. They have a lot of chronic pain, and a lot of the strategies that are out there for dealing with chronic pain are also working well with chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's just, yeah, it's really wonderful to connect, and I appreciate the work that you're doing so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So I'd like to start hearing your story with chronic fatigue syndrome. If you can tell me, when did it start? How was it diagnosed? What did the doctors tell you that you have? Tell me a little bit about the symptoms that you had and how you felt.
Sure. So for me, it all started when I was 30 years old. It came on really fast. I talk to a lot of different people now who are experiencing this, and sometimes it's gradual. It can look different. But for me, it started with a really bad flu. A really bad flu that I got when I was incredibly run down. I had been traveling for weeks and just pushing my body to the limits and not taking care of myself at all. And I got this flu, and essentially I just didn't recover. I would get a little bit better and I'd go back to work, and then it would be like it was back again. And I couldn't figure out what was happening. Was this a new flu? Like, what kind of flu kind of leaves and comes back? It was baffling. So, after this was persisting for a couple of weeks and I'm missing a lot of work, I went in to see my doctor, went to my GP that I had been seeing for years, who I really liked. And she ran all the kind of usual tests. Everything was coming back normal. Sort of just, okay, wait it out, get some rest. It should clear up. And it didn't. So I went back, did a few more tests, and we very quickly got to the point where she just said, I can't find anything wrong with you. And it was a really scary and sort of frustrating experience because, I had to eventually, I'd used up all my sick time. I was taking time off work without pay. And I wanted to go, I realized some people at work suggested through my union that I should go on like some sort of like a short-term disability. So I went into her to fill out the paperwork, and just the reaction was just, well, this is how I interpreted it anyway, almost like a smirk, like, how am I going to fill out this paperwork? There's nothing wrong with you. And it was just a really hard thing, because in my mind, she was kind of my savior who was going to fix all of this for me. But she just wasn't familiar with it. And, this was already almost 15 years ago. So as little as we understand about it now, it was even less then. So Yeah, I just actually just kept getting sicker and sicker. I did end up through another doctor getting the paperwork I needed. I went on a long-term disability leave from work, and I went from being incredibly active, traveling, working full time, going to school part time. I was working on a master's degree program. I was working out 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. I was very social and active on the weekends, to everything just ground to a halt. Everything I did, every physical or emotional exertion that I put out made me feel worse. And I was in bed or on the couch most of the time, could barely leave my house, and just got really, really sick and had no idea what to do.
Oh, wow. Wow. That is such a transformation in your life. How long did you stay in bed or with these symptoms or in long-term disability until you started getting a little bit better? And we'll talk about how and when you got better, but how long did it last?
From start to finish, from when I first got sick until I was fully recovered, was about 10 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of years in your life.
Yeah.
I want to know, did you have pain or not?
I didn't have a lot of pain. I was fortunate. So many people that I talk to with this condition have severe and debilitating pain. I mean, I had a little bit of body aches, I had headaches, but it was by far not one of my prominent symptoms. So, yeah, thankfully, that wasn't one thing that I had to contend with too badly. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your recovery now. I think I'm very curious to know what was your aha moment in your journey, and tell us what did you do and how long have it took for you to. You now say that you're fully recovered, and that's amazing because sometimes people they say I'm going to manage my symptoms, I'm doing fatigue management or pain management, which means they don't consider themselves fully recovered, but you consider yourself fully recovered, and we want to hear what does it mean for you to be fully recovered. But before we get there, tell us, how did your recovery start? Did you just one day you woke up and said, today I'm going to change my life and make a lot of changes in my life, and then things transformed? Tell us your journey.
Sort of, yes. My through the 10 years of this, it happened for me in what I see in sort of three phases. So the first couple of years were my sickest, and I threw everything I had at this, all the money I had, all of my energy that I had. I was just in this bubble of focused on trying to get myself better. I found an integrative medicine doctor who, helped me with a bunch of tests, and so I was all in trying everything, and I felt like about 100 different things at once. I was taking literally about 100 supplements a day. I'm
Wow.
spending thousands of dollars every month on supplements. I was doing anything and everything you could think of, changed my diet, got rid of everything toxic in my house that I could manage. Started doing meditation and just a zillion things like juice fast, whatever I read, whatever the doctor suggested. I don't know, like dry skin brushing. I bought a infrared sauna and I put it in my basement and I was using that, and just so many things. And I did this for about 2 years, and I'd say I recovered probably by about a third of the way there. And then I just seemed to plateau. And I couldn't really think of anything else to do. I'd read everything I could get my hands on, not just on chronic fatigue syndrome recovery, but on like cancer recovery and just any kind of illness. And I didn't know what else to try. My doctor seemed to kind of, not that he'd been given up, but we were running out of things to try. And I kind of felt like this is it. This is as far as I'm going to get. And also, I was just burnt out from my whole life being fixated on trying to heal. And I was miserable, like severely depressed. And I just needed to kind of try and focus on being happy for a while. So I'd say not completely, but I mostly gave up on working on recovery for quite a few years and just existed in survival mode. But every single day was hard, even though I had more functionality and I had, a few usable hours almost every day. Every day was hard. Every day I had symptoms. Every day I was caught often in this cycle of pushing myself too hard and then crashing and having these symptoms flare up. I'm getting worse, getting better. And my aha moment, I guess the big one that finally got me to the finish line, was just sort of reaching my breaking point of, unless I really get serious about this again, this is going to be the rest of my life. And I wasn't even 40 years old yet. I can't live the rest of my life this way. So realizing that also I was never going to get better. I felt with my energy focused in so many different places, like I had to get really serious again and get in sort of that healing bubble and get selfish and make myself a priority and put up a lot of boundaries and just get hyper focused on getting better. And then the third kind of element of that aha moment for me was realizing that most of this was going to have to come from within. I mean, that there's incredible doctors like yourself out there that are helping people, but I didn't know where they were. And to that point in my life, I'm trying to get other people to give me the answer hadn't got me really far. So I knew I was going to have to rely on what I knew, what I'd learned over the years. And over the years, I'd seen little things that had shown promise, but I hadn't really given them a proper try. So I'm just like, okay, this is it. I decided, I gave myself a year. I was very fortunate. My then boyfriend, now husband, offered to, pay for everything and support me in every way. So I just, I'm like, this is it. I got to do it. I was determined.
Yeah, I tell my patients all the time, this is the same thing with chronic pain. I tell them I don't have the magic wand to
Yeah.
make you better, to change your life. You have to change from within. But they tell me that they don't have the energy, they are tired, they have pain all the time. And making changes are difficult. Sometimes it's easier to stay the same. And
Yeah.
making change. And then the other thing that I hear also from my patients is that they are afraid of trying something and be frustrated again, that it's, oh, this is just another thing that I will try and it will not work. Because as you said, you spent thousands of dollars, you were doing everything that came to your, in front of you or your desk or your screen. And what is the guarantee that if this way will change anything? Because you need to put some energy to make change. So I want to ask you now, first of all, how long have you been free from fatigue symptoms now?
Just about 4 years now.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have some relapses? Do you have days that you feel that you have the same symptoms? Or do you think that, like, I know you use the word cured. Do you think that for the past 4 years, you're cured? This is not going to come back to your life.
I say fully recovered or cured. And in the beginning, when I started talking about this, that language was necessary for me just for keeping my head in the right space. I don't claim to know, this is such a mysterious illness. So, of course, I can't say what's going to happen in the future. Remission might be a better word. Although, I've talked to many people like myself who do consider themselves in that fully recovered boat. But it's a tough thing because another thing that a lot of people I talk to who have been through journeys like me is that you lose a bit of your perspective about what you should feel like. Once I recovered, I kind of thought I should feel 100% all of the time, and I can push myself as hard as I want, and I can not take care of like anytime I felt anything less than perfect, it was scary. Like, is it back? Is it coming back? And, I have an incredibly full and busy life now. I do all of this stuff around ME/CFS and long COVID, my YouTube channel. I have, weekly newsletters, online courses, all sorts of stuff. And all of this is just on the side from my full-time job, which is also very demanding. And then I also work out 5 to 6 days a week. I have a lot of different things going on. So I work 6 days a week, often 12 hours, sometimes 14 hours. And I share all this just to demonstrate the point that sometimes I feel crappy, and in those moments, I think like, this feels a little bit like CFS, but this also feels like maybe just when you're 45 and you're pushing yourself too hard
I am
and
tired
you
just
just
to
get
hear you
tired.
talking about.
Yeah. So I don't know. Is it the body giving me little warning signs? Maybe. Is it just like sort of feelings of burnout? The difference I see now, though, is that when I do get myself to that really rundown place, I can mostly get a good night's sleep, or maybe two good night's sleeps, and be back to normal. Whereas before, none of these symptoms were alleviated by rest. So I do still have times when I get run down, and it does feel a bit reminiscent and scary of how I used to feel, but it doesn't last very long, and it quickly goes away. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's the best answer
It
I have so
does,
far on my
yeah.
journey. So,
It does answer because I think what you're describing now is normal tiredness. That if anyone is doing everything you're doing, they would need, a weekend where they're doing nothing, just
yeah.
resting and sleeping. We all need vacations. We all need a day. I am a big proponent of 1 day a week doing nothing.
Yes.
Doing
I
nothing, totally disconnecting. I think we all need that. It's not just people with chronic pain or people with fatigue, any disease, but we all need to disconnect, do something different from what you used to do the other 6 days of the week. And
agreed.
I'm so happy to hear that you are exercising. Tell me a little bit about now. I, I think listeners now want to know what did you do, but I'll keep the best to the end. Tell me what do you do now? You told me that you exercise 6 days a week. You work out 6 days a week. How is this like a light exercise, a workout? Is a vigorous, moderate, and how long? Because I do talk a lot about exercise in my videos, and
Okay.
I have for people the same recipe that I give for exercise for fibromyalgia is the same one that I give for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. I give them recipes for start slow, go slow, very light exercise in the beginning, short periods, focus more on resistance exercise, flexibility, start adding aerobics, cardio. So tell me a little bit about your workout routine now. What is that you do now? And then we'll talk about how did you get to here.
Okay. Yes, it was quite the journey to get here. It happened very gradually because anyone with chronic fatigue syndrome or ME/CFS, they know that for most of us, exercise can make us feel really bad. It usually makes us feel much worse, so we get quite scared of it. So it took me a while to get here. But now, pardon me. So now 5 to 6 days a week, depending on the week, but I have a personal trainer that I work with through an app called Future Fitness. So I have 3 to 4 days a week of strength training, and it is quite vigorous. It's quite intense. I push myself really hard. And then I do 1 day a week I run, and then 1 day a week I play tennis. So
Wow.
divide it up amongst those things. Yeah.
What's the duration of each time that you do? How many minutes each day?
Well, my strength training workouts right now are about 45 minutes, so they're not too long. And then I
Wow.
run for about an hour, and then I usually play tennis for an hour to an hour and a half.
Fantastic. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
inspiring. That's so inspiring. I'm not doing all of those exercises, even though I tell people to do, I need to get on a better routine myself. Thanks God I don't have any symptom. I don't have chronic pain, don't have chronic fatigue, but it's good for my
Yeah.
health and for my well-being. Yeah, so
Something
I
that,
know,
something,
yeah,
oh, sorry. I was just
go
going
ahead.
to say something that helped me with this because my husband struggles with this too. And I used to, because I exercised a lot before I got sick, and then that was taken away from me, not by my choice. I just instantly had to stop. And for so many years, I couldn't exercise. So to get it back has been such a gift. It's not that every day I, run with glee to the gym. There's days I drag myself there, but overall, like during COVID, we had an outdoor gym and you could only go for an hour at a time. And then they'd blow the horn and you had to leave. The next shift would come in. And my husband, after half an hour, would be ready to go. And I would be like the last person. They'd have to kick me out. I'm like, it's just, so, maybe over time this will wear off, but it's still somewhat a novelty. And I have a great appreciation for the ability to do this. So I
Yeah.
think that helps drive me to do it.
Yeah, that's so important, especially if you have someone to go with you, that you have a partner or someone that
Yeah.
is, on the days that it's hard for you to go, they will say, "Oh, let's go." And then you say, "Okay, I'll go just because of you." That's so important. I tell people if you have someone that you can be accountable and a partner that can push you, that's even better.
Hmm.
Yes, so let's get to the most exciting part. Can you tell us the steps that you took for this transformation? I think we all like to know what exactly did you do? What were the steps? And I know this might not be for everybody. I know each person is different, each individual has their own journey, but has a guide. I think the steps that you took, because I saw on your website and on your YouTube channel, they are very similar to what I recommend to my own patients, and they are lifestyle modifications. I talk about this in my new book, The 8 Steps to Conquer Chronic Pain. It's mostly about lifestyle modifications, because at this point we don't have medications to treat fatigue. We don't have medications to eliminate chronic fatigue syndrome. We don't even know where the symptoms start and what is going on. So how can we have medications? The same thing for chronic pain. I don't have one magic pill that remove people's chronic pain, because there are so many changes that happen in the brain, the body, in the receptors for pain, in the emotional state. All of those are linked, mind and body. We can't separate mind and body. So why don't you tell us the main steps that you took for your recovery, and let us know also how long did it take for you to recover?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been reading your book. It's excellent. And I keep thinking like, yes, yeah, I wish I had had this years ago because it would have sped things up so much for me. It's very in line with what has been helping me and what's been helping so many people that I talk to. So I'm so glad that this is out there. I definitely highly recommend it. But yeah, for me, it ended up, when I first started sharing my story, I felt like it was just going to be a bit disappointing to people because the things that I did sound very simple in nature, and they were on the surface. None of it was easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I had to put in so much work. It was not a simple journey, but it was a lot of stuff that really just focused around things that fall under lifestyle medicine. I decided to take an approach that, from things I'd read, and the more I started to understand the body a bit more, I appreciated it, that it was a really incredible healer under the right conditions. So I just thought, how do I help create those conditions for my body so that it can heal me? So I'd moved away from that, waiting for the magic supplement or magic pill that was going to fix me, and just really like, how do I get my body in good shape? So there are a few different things that I focused on. A big piece of it was that mind-body connection. And it's something that I understand much more now, looking back. At the time, I didn't even fully understand what I was doing. But I see now, when I look at different, what they call brain training programs and different things out there, even though I wasn't officially doing one, there were a lot of elements to that in my recovery. So just working on getting my stress down, getting myself into like a calm, happy state, getting therapy, doing journaling, doing meditation, all of that kind of stuff that probably to most people doesn't sound like it's going to, what you're supposed to do to fix what feels like a very physical in your body illness. But those things went really far for me. And then I also address things like nutrition. For me, I found just really cleaning up my diet, getting really strict with it, not perfect, but quite strict with cutting out sugar, caffeine, alcohol, processed foods. For me, it was incorporating a lot more plant food into my diet and doing things to work on healing my gut health, my gut microbiome, and I think all my microbiomes were just a mess. So, I started eating a lot more fermented foods that were naturally rich in probiotics, and that, oh my goodness, made such a world of difference. And then just doing some of the general self-care stuff that I had been taking for granted. I got really, really serious about sleep because my sleep had been bad for years. So my new motto became sleep at all costs. So I just put so much focus into my sleep. I started sleeping in a separate room from my husband. I did a zillion different things just to try and set myself up to get lots of sleep. I started making sure I got sunshine every day and fresh air as much as possible, and getting out in nature and drinking lots of water and, all of those things. And my lymphatic system felt like, again, this is all just sort of self-experimentation and self-diagnosis, but I always felt like I was sort of marinating in this pool of toxicity. Like it felt like my body wasn't cleaning things out like it should be. So I started going for more massages. I was fortunate. I lived someplace where they were really affordable, so I could go quite often. And I started doing like hot and cold showers and just different things to help get things moving. And, I personally found things like fasting and intermittent fasting really helpful too. I'd feel terrible while doing it, but it always gave me kind of a step up in my healing after. So, and a big component of this, kind of saving the best for last, was movement. And even though I was very scared of exercise, and exercise had always made me feel worse, I decided to start as small as I could possibly manage and make it as light as possible. So I started with 1 minute of exercise per day. And by exercise, it was just me, standing or sitting in my living room, just doing some gentle movement. So nothing intense, no push-ups or anything hard. And I did that every day or every second day. And then my goal, and what I, for the most part, stuck to, is that every week I added on 1 more minute. So 2 weeks the next week, 2 minutes the next week, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and so forth. And if I was having a rough week, I might stick at the same minutes, again for 2 weeks in a row. But generally speaking, that's how I went. And doing this, in the beginning, that 1 or 2 minutes would cause a symptom flare and I'd feel a little bit worse, but not terribly so. And it would pass quite quickly. And then in time, it took 3 minutes before those symptoms would kick up, and then 4 minutes and 10 minutes. So I was getting stronger and more endurance. And I understand now that there was a big brain training component to that. It was just gradually showing my brain and my body that activity was safe, because it had been protecting me, I believe, for a long time and just sort of shutting me down, and sticking with that. Within a year, I was doing hour-long, really intense workouts at the gym, and as long as I wanted. And strength training I started with. From there, I went on to cardio. That was another thing.
Oh, amazing. That's so inspiring. And so just to summarize, I like to summarize, so then I fix this in my brain. So at age of 30, you had this flu, virus, something. And then you started with these symptoms of fatigue, intense fatigue. You had to stop working. Your doctor tried to do all tests and investigations, couldn't find anything wrong with you. And you had to go on long-term disability, stop working. And for 10 years, you basically couldn't do much. Is that a good summary of so far?
It is, yeah. I did a few years down go back to work, but I was working mostly from home. It was incredibly difficult, but I was working later on for a few years in my
Okay.
journey. Yeah,
But
three or
then
four years.
what about going out or during those 10 years? Were you able to go to social gatherings, parties, travel for leisure, or any hobbies?
I was, yes. And I found this is one of the things that helped me figure out my recovery, because because I tried going back to work initially just for, I think it was 2 days a week for 4 hours, and I couldn't do it. It just made me so sick. But at the same time, I could do other things that I enjoyed for 4 hours and I would be mostly okay. So, if it was something that was stressful, that was difficult, something that evoked a lot of, like I was a social worker in a very busy hospital, so it was a very intense job. So anything like that made me feel worse. But yeah, I did. I had recovered enough that I actually, after those first 2 years when I was really sick, I just kind of gave up on everything. I was severely depressed and I'd always wanted to travel. And I decided that I was going to go travel, which felt insane because I had just failed at this 2 times a week, 4-hour shifts. But yeah, I was going to go travel by myself. But I figured even if I was just laying in bed, at this time I'd moved back home with my dad and I was just in the bedroom all day. I'm like, even if I'm just laying in bed, if it's in another country, so be it. Like I'll crawl around if I have to. And I really surprised myself when I got there. And I think that's just that whole mind-body connection that I was kind of rediscovering some happiness and joy. And it was giving me the ability to, I had to do everything in chunks, but I could socialize a bit. I could, sightsee a bit, come home, rest. But I could do some things for sure.
Yeah, I have many patients that tell me the same story that they say, Dr. Furlan, I went to Italy, visit my family, And I was there, I think something with the water there because I didn't feel pain
Yes.
for the whole month. And and then they say something that they ate, or it's the water or the air.
Hmm.
And I tell them, no, it was just that you left your problems here in Toronto, in Canada. And when you were there, your mind was in a different place. And the mind is so powerful that can suppress symptoms when it doesn't feel that those symptoms are needed, expected, necessary. Yeah, so I tell them, when you come back now to Toronto and you are living here, your problems are here, your life is here. We will need to find out how can we bring your mindset that you had there here, because that's the solution. The solution is inside of you. And then, so to summarize your case a little bit more, so then after 10 years of struggling, spending a lot of money and resources and time on many things that you thought could be the solution. Like I have so many patients of mine that they do the same thing. They buy mattresses, equipment, supplements, and they take pills, and they want more MRIs and X-rays and CT scans and ultrasounds and more blood tests because they want to find out what is wrong with their body. And even if we find, because sometimes we find something wrong in the blood test, or we will find something wrong, the MRIs are great to find something wrong because MRIs are so sensitive to any tiny little change. I tell them, I never seen a normal MRI in my whole life. We're always going to find something wrong, even in people who don't have any pain. But they want more and they want something done for them. But I think what you found is that the answer was simple. It was inside of you. And the answer was so simple that it didn't even look so scientific.
No.
It's just normal, healthy lifestyle, things that are maybe our grandparents used to do. Eating healthy, sleeping, taking some sun, exercising, moving, socializing. I think people don't understand that those simple things in life have a big influence on how our bodies heal. And our mind is extremely influenced by what is around us, the people that we surround ourselves. So your story is so illustrative. I think your story illustrates a lot of people that I say and I keep telling on my channel and my book. So I have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind. What would you like to tell to someone who is listening to this episode and they have chronic fatigue syndrome and they are in the situation that you were, like trying to do your best, but still not seeing a lot of improvement, not seeing a full recovery. Like they look at you and they say, oh my God, she can go to the gym, she can run, she can play tennis, she's working full time, she has a YouTube channel, she wrote a book, and she is doing so much. And what would you tell them if they are tired, fatigued? What is your message for them?
I know it's tough and it can feel like sometimes like things are never going to change. I think that the biggest thing I hear from other people who have recovered, and that just ultimately was the biggest driver for me, is just never giving up. And I know that's challenging because you have to keep picking yourself back up again and again and again and trying new things and finding reason to be hopeful and opening yourself up to that disappointment of yet another thing not working for you. But, for a lot of people, it just takes, once they kind of find those puzzle pieces that work together for them, it can happen quite quickly. And I've recovered people that have been sick for decades, incredibly sick, bedbound, and they have, consider themselves fully recovered in their 60s and their 70s. So, I used to think of it, I tell this analogy when I was sick. I think of it like my illness, like me going through a forest. And my goal is to get through the forest. And I think, if I gave up right now, what if I'm only maybe like 10 trees away from getting out of here? Like, what a waste, what a shame it would be that I made it this far and then this is where I stopped. So the biggest thing that I would have liked to hear and that I share with other people is just keep finding ways to cultivate that hope, whether it's watching recovery stories or whatever it is for you that keeps you optimistic, and just don't give up. Hang in there. I think, for everybody that there are solutions. You just have to find the right recipe for you.
Yeah, finding the right recipe for each person because the recipe may be different for each one. And I know in your channel you have almost 17,000 subscribers in your channel and more than 1 million views in your channel. And tell me a little bit about why did you open the channel? And I know you interview people, other people who have chronic fatigue syndrome. Tell me a little bit about that.
I started it very reluctantly. Initially when I recovered, I realized, because my mother also had chronic fatigue syndrome, so I grew up with this, and she never recovered. And we suspect my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, also had it. So when I got past it, and I hadn't really heard of anybody in the world recovering, I just really felt like this was a story that needed to be told, needed to at least get it out there that one person had recovered. And I wrote my book, but as an unknown author, nobody could find it. It was buried so deep in the search results. So I'm like, okay, I might need to embrace some of the newer ways of communicating with the world. So it took me months to gather up the nerve because I was terrified. But I felt from what I'd seen that YouTube was probably the best way to reach people. So I very reluctantly started my channel. First, just with the intention of sharing my own journey and my own experience, but I very quickly realized that I didn't think that was anywhere near enough. And I just got on this mission to try and find other people that had recovered. And I figured there's maybe 5 other people in the world who have recovered. I'll somehow find them. I'm going to run out of people to interview really fast. But I couldn't believe how many people there were. For a long time, I've been booked out months in advance with, like a waiting list of people wanting to share their story. There are so many of us, and we don't hear about it. So this is what drives me to keep doing it, because I know that we need to get these messages out there. Because for most people who get diagnosed, they do a quick Google, and what they find is quite depressing, basically telling you to learn to live with it, and virtually no one recovers. And I personally don't believe that's the case. I don't think we have accurate stats and information on that. And I think there are a lot more people recovering than what some things tell us.
Yeah, your channel is amazing. I wish I had more time to listen to all the stories, but I do listen to some and they are very inspiring. And so what do you think what does the healthcare community, people like me, doctors, researchers, what do we need to do better for people with chronic fatigue syndrome? If you had $10 million to give to research for chronic fatigue syndrome, what does research would look like? What do you think we should do? And also for healthcare providers like me, what do you think I could do better for people with chronic fatigue syndrome?
Well, for healthcare providers, I think you are doing all the things right, pretty much. You're such a, I think, shining example of what this can be, and how grateful so many people like myself would be to get to work with a doctor like you, who is so open-minded. I understand that a lot of doctors just didn't get the training on these sorts of conditions, so they just don't have the tools. So, the number one thing a lot of us are looking for is just not to be dismissed. Just kind of validate that even though the tests are showing us that everything is normal, that they believe that we're sick. And, the doctor I ended up working with, even though he didn't find all the tools to, help me sort of fully cure me, I think he's the reason I'm still here today. I think he kept me alive because he was this ally who said, I don't know what the answer is here, but I believe you. I see that you're sick, and we're going to work together, and we're going to figure this out. And he really empowered me. He'd recommend books for me to read. He told me to, really trust my gut and what felt right to me, and, help me explore different things. So for the healthcare providers, I think it's just, even when you don't have the answers, just, validating those people's experience and being willing to be open-minded and work with them. And to be open-minded and consider that, hey, maybe some YouTube channels out there might have something to offer, even though these people didn't go to medical school. People like yourself that are, so kind and open-minded to bring me on your channel to share, my experience and what I'm seeing. I think that can go a really long way. As for the research question, I think the absolute best place to start is with the people who have recovered. Do more qualitative research, get out of the lab. All of that stuff is important. We need to look at genetics and everything else. I don't even know what the researchers are looking into, but I think there's so much value to be found in talking to the people who have recovered. Do what people like myself are doing, but in a more systematic kind of scientific way, and start gathering information and themes from those stories, and then let that guide where the further research goes. And I suspect if the people I'm interviewing are any indication, it's going to be a strong shift towards more of a mind-body medicine connection, which I don't think there's anywhere near enough information or research or awareness about. And a lot of us aren't hearing about that when we go to see our conventional, medical doctors. So, that's what I would say.
I agree with you. I think those are excellent points. And I think if there is any researcher listening to this, they can find people who recovered easily contacting you. You have a list of so many people who want to tell their stories that they recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome. That's so inspiring. So Raelan, where can people find you? Tell us how they find you on YouTube and where else they can find you and your materials.
Yeah, so everything out there pretty much is under my name. The thing I put the most into is my YouTube channel, which is just Raelan Agle. And you find all sorts of recovery stories from fibromyalgia, from chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, and then also just general information on health and happiness. I also wrote a book. It's called Finding Freedom, Escaping from the Prison of Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. So it's sort of like a two-part book. The first part is just telling my story of what it was like to live with being sick. And I try and do it in a entertaining and light way, not to make light of the situation, but we're all suffering enough. We don't need to read another depressing book. It's good to be able to look back and laugh at your experience. And then the second part walks you through what I did to recover. And then I also have a website, which is raelanagle.com, which directs you to various online courses I have in different social media spaces, Instagram and so forth.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that I'll put all these links in the description of this video below so people can just click and find you. Raelan, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I didn't ask you today?
I just always like to end on that message of, for people watching, if you're currently going through this, I know it can feel incredibly tough. I just really, want to reach through the camera always and give you a hug and just say, keep at it, keep going. You've totally got this. You will get there. Just don't give up. That's essentially it.
Thank you very much. And so for those people watching today, thank you so much. You know that this video does not offer medical advice to anyone. I'm not here to offer medical advice, and Raelan is not here to give you medical advice. We're just sharing here information, what worked for her. Please talk to your doctor if you think you have chronic fatigue syndrome. And also don't try to diagnose yourself, because the diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome is a medical diagnosis. You should check with your doctor if you have symptoms of fatigue, because fatigue can be related to many other organic conditions, and you need to be checked if you don't have one of those. But if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, if your doctor tells you you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you may have here some resources for you. And if you are watching this video and you feel uneasy, if you feel some emergent issues or symptoms, please go to the nearest emergency department or call an ambulance, because we are not able to help you right now. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And if you like this video, give a like here and write your comments. I think Raelan and I will be reading the comments of this video, and we'll be happy to answer as we can. We're all busy. Sometimes we can't answer all comments, but please stay here and write comments and watch our next videos. Thank you for watching today. Goodbye.